Welcome to the 615 Sessions podcast on this Friday, October 25th. We're happy to have you in for another episode of the podcast, not the primetime show. It's a different show. We're happy to have Teron Davenport of ESPN, where you can also check out his podcast, Talking with TD. Of course, you can read him online at ESPN.com. Been a busy week. Teron heads on a swivel still, given that we have about, 10 more days till the trade deadline. But news of the week is DeAndre Hopkins out, Ernest Jones out, Jerome Baker in, and we'll see if it stops there. How we living?
Yeah, man, it's definitely been a busy week, man. The Ernest Jones one was a shocker, but hey, this is what happens. It's part of the business. But yeah, I mean, it's been busy for sure.
Practice just concluded. I know you just jumped out of the locker room before the both of us and the rest of the cruise ship up to Detroit on Sunday. I guess, I don't know what people expect an NFL locker room to be like in a situation like this, TD, if you've never actually been in one and around guys. And I would understand why people like fans would think, okay, well, the vibes are probably down tremendous. Dudes are being shipped off one way or the other. People project their own emotions onto players and things like that. But certainly that's not the sense that we've gotten this week, even though we understand the situation this team's in at 1-5.
Yeah, that's definitely not the sense. Guys, like, they understand that this is a business. I thought Jaquan Jackson made the ultimate point when he's like, man, this is what I dealt with at Tulane in college, right? Because you got NIL and now guys are shuffling around. So you see players exposed to that earlier. And it's just one of those things where everybody understands that ultimately there's a job they have to do regardless of who's next to them. And I think that's been really good for the Titans to know that is the case.
Yeah, there's not a lot of quiet quitting in the NFL, right? It's like you don't just show up to work because you stop liking your job or you stop liking your situation. You got to work your ass off to improve the situation rather than just allow things to continue to pass you by. And that's where this team is at right now. Injury updates, we've gotten a few of them. Calvin Ridley, I know you guys who were out there practice. I didn't go to practice today for the audience. Radio shows on during Friday practice, so that's not something I get to see. But Calvin Ridley, Jeff Simmons back, sounds like trending towards optimism on those two, if not Will Levis, who we expect to sit again for another week.
Yeah, those guys will probably play, Ridley and Simmons. Levis is more than likely going to be out. And Brian Callahan said it's either he starts or he's not available, period. So there isn't going to be any backup type of situation. That's why you see Trevor Siemian tomorrow get that practice squad elevation.
Yeah, and so I'd be curious to know, given that you have experience with the wide receiver position, probably as much as any position in the sport, what do you think that we can learn about the rest of them without DeAndre Hopkins on this roster? Because, D-Hop off to the worst statistical start of his career. The passing offense hasn't been good for anybody, whether you're a wide receiver, a tight end, a running back, or otherwise. So I'm curious to see how the coaching staff involves these guys, because to me, Teron, this becomes a coaching staff evaluation game. Like you and I were there at Nissan Stadium when Matt LaFleur devised a way to beat the Houston Texans with Kevin Pomfield, Tyler Merritz, and Blaine Gabbert, right? Like these things are not impossible, even if they are improbable in the NFL. Now, I know Detroit is a much better team than that Houston team was back in 2018. But to me, this is about, okay, show me your ability to problem solve at this point, because your personnel is not so devastated that you can't do something here.
Yeah, and I mean, you look, Hopkins played 45% of the snaps, so it's going to be more opportunities for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, especially with Traylon Burks being on IR. So you have that. I think Bryce Oliver probably get the call up. And, I mean, look, he quietly had a really good camp. And I remember every day, like, man, 80 made a play. Oh, 80 made a play. And he just did it over and over again. So he could get the call up. The big situation, though, is with Snead being out and then with Levis likely being out, those are going to be your two call-ups, Judy Lawley as well as Simeon. So now you got Cedric Gray, who could possibly he will at some point get the final roster spot when he comes off of IR. But what do you do with Oliver? Do you sign him to the roster for this week, release him, and then put him back on practice squad? Like that's something they're going to have to figure out. But I think it's going to show each of the receivers, it gives them – there's more opportunities. That's really the bottom line. But it wasn't like Hopkins was out there eating up targets. Tyler Boyd will be the sixth captain in this game, so obviously, that's something for him. You talk about coaching and things like that. I think look at what the Lions do on the opposite side of the coin, right? They play action pass with the best of them, and I'll say it, Jared Goff is the best play action passer in the game, period. Crazy to say it, but it's true. And they feature him. So I think the Titans, they need to work some of that also, right? The two tight end package, use, whether whoever it could be, a Okonkwo, whoever, bring them in motion, release them as lead blockers and things like that. So there's ways to go about handling this, and we'll see what Callahan and Holtz and company do.
Yeah, no, it's just a part of the evaluation on everybody, right? And like to your point, like just watching the Lions, the way that they consistently work the intermediate part of the field feels like for the Titans offense right now, it's precious little feast. So I don't even want to describe it as feast or famine in that way, but it either feels like we're talking about checkdowns or Will Levis not being able to connect with a target deep down the field. They haven't really found that consistency anywhere in their passing game, but they also don't have the offensive line nor the run game, frankly, that the Lions do. I love Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in that backfield. That Minnesota game is the one that I spent the most time watching this week of the Lions games that they've played. That was as entertaining a game, I think, as you could have right now between two quality opponents and two quarterbacks who, are on different teams at this point in their career and finding ways to thrive and show the growth and experience that, I think Titans fans were looking to see from Will Levis, but we understand that those situations are different at this point. From a matchup standpoint, though, Teron, like the name that jumps out to me here is Jaquan Jackson, who doesn't have a catch yet this year in the regular season. The build is that of a slot receiver, but we know that there are plenty of smaller guys who can play on the outside. That's not a concern necessarily here. But I look at Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, who's a different player, and say the value in Nick is that, one, he's consistent catching the football now, and two, he knows all three positions. And I wonder what your thoughts are on Jaquan Jackson, not in the same mold of player, but in that same kind of realm of, all right, utility. Can he do enough of their offense in all three of those spots to make himself viable in an opportunity like this one?
Absolutely. And he spoke to that point on Wednesday.
Yeah.
He said he's cross-trained, and he gave the ultimate quote: "You stay ready so you don't have to get ready." So he's looking for an opportunity, and he's an old young man, so to speak. He probably got a lot of Luther Vandross and Freddie Jackson in his catalog pregame. But I think he's 100% capable of that. The thing I like about him is you can run that slant, and let him catch the ball and get somewhere. It turns into kind of like a punt return situation. I know he hasn't been great from that perspective, but that's ultimately what it turns into. Find a seam and go.
Yeah, and I know we'd like to see him get a little more north and south on those returns like you're talking about, but he's also not getting a ton of help around him on these punts.
Yeah, it's been tough.
Which, it's their problems are multiple. It's not just one thing this year, even if the biggest thing is the quarterback, which, becomes the focal point. But Mason Rudolph has given this team the best quarterback performance or best quarterback play consistently that we've seen all year. I know it's, Miami and a half against Buffalo, but I just, there's something about me not having to worry about what's in that dude's head, Teron, that is just kind of so calming a little bit. And you almost get that sense from the players. They're not saying that Will Levis is not somebody that you can trust or commenting on, his mental or things like that. But we talked to Tony Pollard this week. Tony's not often available in the locker room, but was good this week, I thought. And I asked him specifically about what he likes about the way that Mason handles things. And he brought up, well, he just knows how to deal with guys at every level, right? Rookies, vets, how he communicates with them during drives, how he talks to dudes off to the side, how he's able to point out different things that a less experienced player just can't do. So I know it's a long shot. They're going to be the biggest betting underdog on the season so far in the NFL this year in Detroit, but I do think that Mason Rudolph gives them a legitimate chance to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a chance to win. I would say this: what you get with Rudolph, things are a little more on time, on schedule. Then you also don't have to worry about the crazy mistake, right? That is something. But just like Levis, there's 4 or 5 plays I've seen, in the games that he started, it's like, why didn't you go there? And it's easy to sit here and say, hey, you should have done this or that. But I mean, that's all we could do watching. And it's just like there's plays to be had that are left on the field.
Defensively, no Snead. L'Jarius Sneed going to miss another week with this quad injury. They've been working reserves corners all year, and these guys got a ton of work in training camp for the same reason that we're talking about now, essentially. So they have options here. Jarvis Brownlee, I thought, has acquitted himself well. They're going to be without Jamison Williams, which just takes out a portion of the dimensions of the ways that the Lions can hurt you, right? Because you and I were talking about it yesterday or maybe Wednesday at practice. Tiny Khalif Raymond out there just routing dudes up in that
Yeah,
offense. I'm on
he can
Ross St.
still do it.
Brown. The running backs also have the ability to hurt you in the passing game. And I wonder what you make of Sam Laporta, who's, a good player, but hasn't really been involved that much in their offense this year.
Yeah, I mean they scheme ways to get him. Actually, I featured him in Whiteboard Wednesday. Obviously, it's a little different when you don't have Jamison Williams clearing out. You got Khalif Raymond, but I mean they scheme ways to get him the ball, but it's kind of gone elsewhere. I think you had the emergence of Jamison Williams, really, that has made the ball go that direction. Of course, Amon St. Brown. So we'll see. Laporta may end up getting some opportunities. We don't know if Jerome Baker is going to play, and tight ends have typically done a solid job against the Titans for the most part over the last couple of years. So this could be one of those get back on track games for Laporta. We'll see. But you're right. He hasn't been featured fully, but I could see this being a week for him.
And certainly with Jack Gibbons expected to see some work in the linebacker situation. Those are matchups that we knew that offensive coordinators were probably going to test, if not exploit. And that has been the case between him and Kenneth Murray. Not the best coverage group, obviously. Is that the best offensive line in football, Detroit?
It very well may be. I mean, you got bookends there. I think the Eagles still have an argument to be made, but I probably would go that direction. Yeah.
They, the Titans defense continues to be statistically sound. There are places where, explosives against Josh Allen are going to happen, and they've done well to kind of limit explosive plays this year, which was the thing that plagued them the most in the previous iteration of Titans defenses under Vrabel and Shane Bowen. The lack of pressure, though, Tehran, that they are just not even sacks, right? I just want to see them consistently or find ways to consistently disrupt the quarterback, disrupt the timing of a passing game. And even when they were stalling out the Bills' offense in the first half, I just didn't feel like they were getting to Josh Allen in a way that was causing that part of it. It just was like the Bills were problem solving in real time, and then things clicked in the second.
Yeah, it was just shutting everything else down. That's what happened. Now, you mentioned Brownlee Jr. He did have a breakdown in that game as well. Um, Denard Wilson explained it, and he kind of lost track of where the ball was going, and Keon Coleman was wide open there in cover three, so he had that deep third. And Wilson has said if he stayed with his assignment, that doesn't happen. But you're right about the lack of pressure, and Brian Callahan spoke about it today. It's about how they're just a clip short, getting there. And I'm like, well, how about getting more connected on the outside, right? Get hands on these receivers, slow them down, have some conversations with them, physical ones. And that's not really happening out there. So as a result, you're seeing less sacks also. They have to get better from that perspective. Yeah, they're not going to get much pressure this week, though, because like you said, that Lions O-line is something special.
Well, and Sweat is dealing with an injury, so take
Yeah.
that into consideration. Jeff is dealing with a bum elbow, though. Jeff makes enough plays, right? Like there are enough plays being made, but we have not seen the best player on the football team take over a game, right? And that,
Yeah.
I don't expect it to be this week. I think there's a couple of different things happening here because I understand Jeff's situation. I understand that he can't do it on his own. I understand that he is the focal point of offensive coordinators saying, all right, we're going to neutralize or do our best to neutralize this guy and then try and win in other places because we think we can do that from a matchup standpoint. But I want to see him be special at some point, TD, and I keep waiting for that moment. I don't know what it's going to take if this is even a year for them. It may just be a down year.
Yeah, you do need to see more of those moments. I think he had one, the Amani Hooker interception. He
Mhm.
drove the guard back. Flacco couldn't step into the throw. It was short and boom, picked off. There needs to be more of those, though. That's a fact, and I know he's injured, but I mean, yeah, he has to deliver more plays.
Well, and like that's the other part of this defensive thing. Like they're not getting turnovers because they also don't disrupt the quarterback,
Yep.
and it's all connected in these different ways, right? So you don't want to hyper scrutinize the defense when you can't score. Everything is magnified. Everything feels worse. Every little mistake is, oh well, they just suck, right? When you keep
Hmm.
popping out at 17 or 10, and Brian Callahan, by his own admission, is saying, yeah, if you want to be competitive in today's league, you probably got to average about 3 touchdowns, 24 points, 21 points a game
Yeah.
on a consistent basis. This team isn't sniffing it, save the outlier in Miami that took a couple of different unique situations to happen there to get to 30.
Yeah, it's been like 2 years since they averaged more than 17 points. So that tells you right there.
Yeah. Well, we will be up there in Detroit to check it out. You've got some time to kill. You can check out the Talking with TD podcast if you didn't get enough here. You can also hear him on 1025 The Game. He does weekly appearances with all their show, ESPN.com, the vibes, all the different things. TD, I appreciate you taking some time. I don't know if the audience can really appreciate the starlit backdrop to your Camaro here. But that is some of the most vibey shit I have ever seen, Tehran. You should do hits from your car more often. It's great.
Hey, maybe I should, man. Shout out Kevin Byard. Gave me the idea, and Laurel Murchison told me where to go, and yeah, we got it done.
Titans legend Laurel Murchison. Who could forget? Out there playing decent ball for the Rams. Is he still on the Rams?
Yeah, he's in the Rams. He's in the Rams. Yep.
Big win for them last night. All right.